So this is a topic I've struggled with, honestly, for most of my life. Feeling my feelings, really letting them move through me instead of trying to manage, suppress, avoid, or straight up fearing them. I've worked on this for years, and while progress has sometimes been slow, it has been incredibly meaningful. For most of my life, I got good at suppressing emotions. I was master at it, really. I knew how to shut it down, push it away, keep things functioning, especially in early recovery. That skill served me at times. It kept me safe. As a sober addict, I am full of paradoxes. I feel everything deeply. I think deeply too, which, if I, being perfectly honest, can be really dangerous when you're wired like me. This means sometimes I would get stuck in my own intensity. So I've always had this emotional intensity, but without the understanding of what it meant. So I feel things on a deep level, yet at the same time, I have historically lacked an understanding of my feelings, which resulted in me being absolutely terrified of my feelings, viewing them as something to suppress, manage, or avoid. Now, this is highly common among addicts, but it is also common with non-addicts as well. Feeling is one of the most important subjects here in Earth School because it's how the soul metabolizes growth. Look, I was not personally thrilled when I came to this realization. Please tell me there's another way. When Earthlings suppress feelings, they get stored in the body and buried in the psyche. This suppression manifests itself in all sorts of diseases and ailments, whether it's physical symptoms like physical pain, gut issues, insomnia, but it also manifests through mental and emotional ailments like anxiety, depression, anger issues, even like obsessive compulsive tendencies. I mean, there are countless ways this suppression can manifest, right? The question is, does getting better at understanding and feeling emotions resolve the ailments that are manifested from them being trapped or suppressed? In this video, I am going to share with you the things I have learned over the years as someone who has deeply struggled with having a phobia of feeling. As well as some tools that have really worked for me. This is the center focus of my work because it bleeds into all of my other work. What am I feeling, and how can I get better at identifying, expressing, and feeling my feelings? So if getting better at feeling sounds terrifying, this video might be for you. I used to pad my environment to avoid emotional triggers. I can still do this today, but it is light years better and few and far between. I would do what I could to avoid certain situations, people, TV, music, anything that could create an emotional response that I felt that I couldn't handle. I especially did this in the first several years of sobriety because I had very little tools, and the only tools I did have, using pills and alcohol, was taken away from me. Early sobriety is also hard because every suppressed emotion I had decided to come pouring out. But taking away alcohol and pills just led me to create new ways to suppress certain emotions. I mean, you can do this by watching TV, scrolling, food, smoking, sex, not even just sex, but like love addiction, that hyper focus on a love interest. You can do it through workaholism or just by overly packing your schedule. Have you ever met that person who constantly needs to be doing something or hanging out with someone or in some sort of engagement? I mean, there's so many ways to avoid and suppress. Our modern world makes that extremely easy. I was truly an expert in emotional suppression, which was a rough spot to find myself in. I didn't want to be an expert in that. Unraveling years of expertise to head in a new direction was not easy. The problem was, I didn't want to be overly emotional either. Those that have trouble feeling and identifying emotions also tend to have some challenges expressing emotions. So not only did I have very little awareness of how I was truly feeling, but I also had trouble appropriately expressing how I was feeling. This was extremely frustrating and upsetting to me. I am someone who generally speaks well, but if I was put in an emotionally charged situation or even a semi-difficult conversation, I was unable to properly identify or express my feelings. I had trouble identifying and expressing myself within the moment, especially in the conversations that were more challenging. This put me in a weak position. I was easily dominated in conversation, and it was really easy to get me worked up. Now the conversation is becoming more about how I am unraveling and losing composure rather than the topic at hand. And boy, did I hate this part of the process. My remedy was to swing the other way and train myself to not really care. I thought emotional balance was shutting down the emotion. I remember I would repeat to myself, I don't care, over and over again. This was just another form of emotional suppression because I did care. Convincing myself that I did not care created all sorts of other issues because now I truly didn't know my preferences, and it got me even further away from identifying my feelings. I didn't realize this was another form of emotional suppression. I actually thought I was getting better at handling my feelings because I was having less emotionally charged reactions. But all I did was figure out another way to suppress. And boy, did this backfire on me. It took a really painful situation to bring me to the realization that I was doing this, that I was in fact no better at identifying and expressing myself. But this intensely painful situation led me to actually work on improving in this area. At first, I had no awareness of all the ways I was in emotional suppression. Then the lessons of Earth School brought about the awareness that I was quite often engaging in emotional suppression, and I had a lot of trouble with emotional expression, which then led me to realize that I had a very small emotional vocabulary. Years ago, I had this mentor that I spoke to on a daily basis, and this person had me start the conversations with how I was feeling in that moment. I used to say, I'm feeling fine. That didn't fly with her. I was told that fine is not a feeling, but rather a placeholder for an emotional state. I could tell you when I was angry, but outside of fine and angry, my emotional vocabulary was very limited. This was my first step. Expand my emotional vocabulary. And you want to know what I used to do to do that? A feeling wheel. Feeling wheels are underrated. I had it saved on my phone and I would use it constantly. And I started getting better and better at properly naming what I was feeling, which is vital. Let me show you why in this example. One day a few years ago, I woke up with the feeling of like a dark cloud looming over my head. I felt bad and I didn't know why. Feeling bad is extremely vague and not entirely helpful, so I needed to go deeper, right? I pulled up my feeling wheel to try and identify with more clarity the bad feeling I was feeling. And the word that jumped out of the page at me was inadequate. I was feeling inadequate. Now, feeling inadequate can definitely be considered a bad feeling, but me properly naming the feeling was drastically more helpful in me addressing the emotion. There wasn't much I could address with a vague feeling of bad, but I was able to do a lot with the understanding that I was feeling inadequate. Naming the emotion properly will significantly help you with your feelings around the emotion. I highly recommend putting a feeling wheel on your phone as a super simple way to get better at expanding your emotional vocabulary. Can you get better at properly naming the emotion you are experiencing? There is a huge somatic element to this as well. Throughout this episode, I have somewhat used the term feelings and emotions interchangeably, but let's clarify. So emotions are biological reactions triggered by external stimuli or internal thoughts. Emotions are typically quick, largely unconscious, wired through our nervous system. So they show up in bodily responses. Think like racing heart, sweaty palms, shakiness. Say I'm out hiking and a bear approaches me. My heart immediately starts racing. My body temperature rises while experiencing the emotion of fear. So that is emotions. It's energy in motion, and there's probably not much I can do to stop these biological reactions that are triggered by the bear I'm seeing in my path. My feelings, however, are a conscious awareness and the interpretation of the emotion that I'm experiencing. If I'm experiencing fear from seeing a bear approach me, my feelings surrounding this encounter are telling me, you're going to die and you're never going to see your family again. And this is going to be all your fault for hiking alone without bear spray. You're an idiot who deserves to die. That would be an example of my feelings surrounding the emotion of fear. And my feelings about a certain emotion is going to be shaped by my personal experiences, my beliefs, and my culture. You might want to listen to that again. Now, running into a bear isn't something most people experience on a daily basis. If you're like me, then your emotions might be more triggered by internal thoughts. This is a whole other topic that I will go into in another episode. So a feeling is how we label and make sense of the emotion that we are experiencing. Do you see why it's very beneficial to properly label the emotion? Feelings tend to linger a lot longer than an emotion, so it is to my benefit to get better at my interpretation of the emotion that I am experiencing. When I properly identified that I was feeling inadequate, I was then able to see that I was engaging in a story that was comparing someone else's outsides to my insides, which isn't a fair comparison, right? I could see the emotion I was feeling was inadequate, but the feeling of inadequacy was developing into quite a story filled with evidence of inadequacy. That quick emotion of inadequacy shifted into a heavy feeling because I filtered it through old patterns, my upbringing, my past, my wounds, my belief system. And suddenly it wasn't just a sensation anymore. It became a full-blown narrative. Feeling is a vital component to the Earth School experience. To feel is to learn. To numb is to pause. I know this from personal experience. Every emotion, no matter how messy, opens up a portal. Learning how to do this is a skill, meaning you can get better at this with practice just like any other skill. When someone's good at feeling and expressing emotion, they move through life with like this quiet superpower. I used to study those people. If you can find someone who you know in your life that does this well, like truly does this well, watch them. Study them. When I know how to properly name, sit with, and let an emotion move through me, I am able to think more clearly. I can process stress faster, and I can respond instead of reacting. When I can do this, my physical avatar also improves as well. There is less tension, which means less health ailments. My nervous system is more regulated. I can breathe, sleep, and move through life easier. Spiritually, I'm more connected when I'm able to experience the full range of the human experience, which heavily involves emotions. When I can do all this, I'm suddenly not just surviving Earth School. I am studying the curriculum. Now, just to be clear, learning how to do this is a skill, meaning we can get better at this with practice just like any other skill, right? But that only happens if we practice. If you are going to practice this, then that means you are going to royally butcher this at times. When I was trying to practice this and often did it poorly, I swung the other way and tried to train myself not to care. I am in a much better space knowing that it is important for me to practice this even when I sometimes do it poorly or I get it wrong. You better get comfortable at not doing this perfectly. And if that's something you struggle with, then you can watch my video on perfectionism, which I will link below. Practicing means that you will sometimes fumble through it. Practicing means that I will sometimes fumble through it. But I can tell you that every year I continue to grow, strengthening my emotional capacity and deepening my understanding of what I am feeling and why. And that is invaluable. Have a good week.